I want to thank Stephanie
Stephanie Bailey and the Blue Outpost
Democrats organization for the work
that you all are putting into the most important series of elections of our lifetimes, highlighting these critically important state house races, where for the first time in 20 years we have a chance to win a majority in the state legislature, is critical not only for getting back control of our state government and dismantling the infrastructure of voter suppression and voter intimidation, and moving forward on the big
we want to do for our fellow Texans, but it's also going to help us up ballot, whether they are the congressional races that we want to hold on to Democratic seats, or the congressional races where we can flip a Republican seat into Democratic control, or defeating John Cornyn, Donald Trump's single greatest enabler in the United States Senate, and sending in his place MJ Hagar, who will represent us in a way that we can be proud of, or this. Texas has a chance for the first time in 44 years, since 1976, to send our electoral college votes to the Democratic nominee, Joe Biden, and defeat Donald Trump, and thereby turn the page on Trumpism and begin the next necessary new chapter for this state and for our country. Texas has the chance to come through big time for America, and that fight is being led by these courageous state house candidates who are doing everything they can at this critical moment of truth. Thank you for highlighting them. Thank you for elevating the importance of these races. And thank you for the work that you're doing between now and November 3rd.
Well, hello, Texas Democrats. Thank you, Beto, for that. It's Mike Collier here. We know each other. I ran for Texas Lieutenant Governor. I'm delighted to be here to be your host for the Texas Blue Outpost Democrats Candidate Forum, and delighted to hear a few words from my good friend Beto. We spent a lot of time on the campaign trail. Did you notice his shirt? It said, "Stay tuned." I noticed it. So glad that he's in this fight. So it's wonderful to be in the company of Democrats tonight. We have some fabulous candidates for Texas House. And I echo everything that Beto said. This is such an important election. We must flip the House, because redistricting is coming. And if we don't have a very strong hand in that, we know what's going to happen. We cannot let that happen. We've made so much progress. We must flip the House. We will flip the House. We're all working so hard on that. 34 days until early voting. It's fitting and proper that we be here tonight to do this. And also, we've got to make sure that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris win their races. MJ Hager's got to make it into the Senate. Imagine what happens when Texas turns blue in about 55 days. Now, remember, if Joe Biden wins by a small margin, then it's going to be a lot of work. We'll get there, but it's going to be a lot of work. But imagine what happens when Texas flips and sends 38 electors into the Biden column. That not only defeats Donald Trump, that defeats Trumpism. And Trumpism, characterized as incivility, dishonesty, greed. Don't get me started. We've got all day. But here's the good news. We're not traveling when we're campaigning, but we're campaigning hard on Zoom. And I can tell you that I do this all day long. I love it. And I'm interacting with Democrats all over the state who are energized, enthused. We're not getting tired. We're just getting warmed up. And you're going to hear from some fabulous House candidates today. And it's so important that we support them. And it's so important that we give them cash, because cash makes this work. Now, speaking of cash, I'm going to read off some sponsors for tonight's event. Cannot thank you enough. And I'm going to read them off, and just it's so important. First, our sponsors, the level sponsor. We have the 312th Family District Court Judge, Clinton Chip Wells. Thank you so much. 270th Civil District Court Judge, Deidre Davis. Thank you. Club sponsors. Bayou Blue Democrats, thank you. Meyerland Democrats, Art Cronin, my good friend, thank you so much. Texas Democratic Women of Harris County, the chapter, thank you so much. The Houston Stonewall Young Democrats, Southwest Democrats, Cy-Fair Area Democrats, Humble Area Democrats, that's where I am. You don't pronounce the H, as you know. Democratic Club of the Woodlands, let me tell you something. We are lighting things up in the Woodlands, which is fabulous. Cypress Tomball Democrats, Kingwood Area Democrats, I'm coming to you from my upstairs in Kingwood. Spring Democratic Club, thank you to all. Let's go to the Royal sponsors. former County Clerk Diane Troutman. Diane, thank you so much, and thank you for staying in this fight. Carl Jones, and the Humble Area Democrat President John Carter. Thank you so much. Cotter, make sure I pronounce that properly. Sapphire sponsors, Texas Senate District 3, Committeewoman Shirley Layton. Thank you, Shirley. We were just on a call a moment ago. Texas Senate District 7 Democrats, Attorney Mark Whitehead. Thank you so much. And then organizational sponsors, Powered by the People, Harris County Democratic Party, Flip the Texas House, Sisters United Alliance, boy, the good work that they're doing. Swing Left Texas, Indivisible Houston, Blue Action Democrats. I mean, with sponsors like that, and the energy and the enthusiasm in the state and on this Zoom, how can we not win? So I'm just so happy to be here with you. I'm not on the ballot, but I'm in the fight, and I'm staying in this fight. I'll say one last thing. We've had our shoulder to this wheel for a long time, all of us. And it's finally moving. It's moving in a great way. Beto took us so close to the goal line, to the end zone. We're getting in that end zone in 55 days. So thank you so much. Now I'm going to turn it over to our moderators who are going to run the rest of the meeting. My good friends, and I hope they're standing by to come on. Jaime Rodriguez, thank you for doing this, Jaime, and Carly Mosher. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
You know, it's always good to have a little bit of star power before we have big events. And this series of forums is going to be, I think, one of the biggest events in Texas. And as you say, it's so important. Just trying to do everything we can to flip the state house. The state house. I mean, this is something that most people don't think about. And this is where it's at. If the state house flips, then we get to be in charge of redistricting for the next 10 years. And, you know, part of the reason why this myth exists that Texas is red is because they gerrymandered during the 2003 redistricting process. And I say 2003 because if y'all remember, in 2002, we had legitimate redistricting. And then in 2003, it was reopened in Texas and very unethically, illegitimately was redistricted. Craziness happened, but all that's going to change in the 2021 legislative cycle. So in January, the state house, once it flips, it's going to be ours. And Mike, thank you so much. All right, Carly, are you ready to go?
Let's go.
All right, Mike, we'll see you on Thursday night then.
All right, we'll see you then. We'll see you then.
So much.
So, Carly, we have a great show for the audience.
We do. Today is going to be a very exciting start to what promises to be a very inspiring series of forums. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Good. And you know, we've done these forums before, and we did them in the form of debates ahead of the Democratic primary.
That's
so
right.
Back in May, we did them every Tuesday and Thursday nights. But we focused on East Texas races and a couple of the statewide races. Mm-hmm. Now we've expanded the idea. Tell us what this expansion of the idea is, Carly.
So we have expanded to targeting the 17 most flippable House races. And these races were all lost by less than a 10% margin. So we know that we can do it here in Texas, especially given the atmosphere that we're living in and the amazing candidates that are running for these seats. That doesn't hurt at all. So we made sure that we wanted to target each different area over the next few nights. We're going to do Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday nights at 7 p.m. We're going to do several candidates. Tonight, for example, we have a candidate from the Houston area. We also have a candidate from the Dallas area and the Plano area. So it promises to serve for questions answered from all over the state and even the nation. So we hope that you'll tune in each night and ask these candidates the imperative questions that really are important to you.
Okay, so let's go ahead and meet the candidates we're going to be talking with tonight.
Yeah.
And why don't we start with Ann Johnson?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me on. My name is Ann Johnson.
Good. And we'll introduce everybody, and then we'll get everybody's word in. So, Carly?
All right. And the next candidate that we have is Brandy Chambers.
Hi, everybody.
Hey,
and Lorenzo, are you there? Lorenzo. Excellent. So those are our three candidates for this evening. Audience, sit back, relax. We have a great show for you tonight. And let's just tell you all the format of the show tonight. So we're going to start with each of you candidates giving us a 1-minute introduction, which is pretty standard, get you all into this. But then we have a lightning round. So we have a few questions that we want you to answer in 1 or 2 words. Nothing too crazy, but we want to get to know you fast. People from all over the country are watching this, and so we want to generally get to know who you are as a person. Once we've done that, the next segment is philosophical questions. In those, you'll have 1 minute to answer. And these are the kinds of questions that you should be asking of any candidate or any elected official anywhere in the country at any time. And these people should be thinking about these types of topics. So the candidates tonight will test them out on that theory and see what they've thought about these kind of grand topics. You know, a lot of times we elect candidates who are impressing us with the local themes of the day, the issue of the day. And then we realize 2 or 3 years later, after they've been elected, that they don't really know much more than that one issue that they got elected on. And we're stuck with a candidate now for 20 years. So, you know, we like to say, let's get to know the candidates for real before we just jump on board one issue and become one issue candidate type people. After that, though, after the philosophical questions, we do want to ask you about the issues of the day. So we want to get you on record talking about that. And we're going to have a whole section on that in the next hour. And we'll finish up the first hour with questions about your district specifically. And we'll listen to you talk to us about your districts specifically. And then at 8 o'clock, you, the audience, get to participate. Just go ahead and start sending us your questions now on Facebook to Blue Outpost Texas. That's Blue Outpost TX on Facebook, Blue Outpost TX on Facebook. Go ahead and start asking your questions as they come along. We have a team of people behind the scenes working with us. They're going to feed Carly and I the questions, and we're going to give the candidates 30 seconds each to answer your audience questions. So that'll be between 8 and 8:30 tonight. And so we have a full hour and a half ahead of us. Again, appreciate everybody for joining us. And Carly, why don't you take it away with the lightning round? Let's start, or no, sorry, with the candidate introductions. Why don't you go ahead and get us started?
We would like to start with candidate introductions, and I would like to go, in the most judgmental. I don't want anybody to think I have anything. So we're going to go in alphabetical order. We'll start with candidate Chambers. A minute to introduce.
I figured it would be Ann with A, so I'm just like, oh, okay.
Last names.
Got it. So, hi everyone, I'm Brandy Chambers. I am running for the Texas House for District 112, which is the northeast borders of Dallas County. I am a mother. I am an employment lawyer. I am a mediator. These things are extremely crucial, I think, going into the legislature. In 2018, I was the first-time candidate running against a 5-term Republican incumbent in a race that I was supposed to lose by 14 points. I earned 49% of the vote and almost won, just narrowly missing it by 1,100 votes out of 53,000 votes cast. Mm-hmm. So now I am back to fight to make sure we get it across the line. And because of all the hard work that we put into in 2017 and 2018, this race is now number 3 of the most winnable races and flippable races in the state of Texas, so we can have Democratic control of the House. So there you go. Thanks. I hope that was 1 minute.
That was wonderful.
That was perfect. So that puts Ann Johnson up next.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ann Johnson. I'm running in House District 134, which is in Houston, Texas. I am your former chief human trafficking prosecutor here in Harris County. I'm also a current teacher teaching at South Texas College of Law, and I have my own practice, practicing law in our criminal court system, representing mainly those who don't have enough money to afford a lawyer and representing victims of sexual exploitation and human trafficking. We are running in one of the top seats that needs to flip going into redistricting, and I know when we flip this seat and flip the Texas House, we can begin saving lives by addressing Medicaid expansion and providing coverage to those millions of individuals with pre-existing condition, passing and advancing issues around common sense gun reform, rebuilding our economy around renewable energy, and then most important, coming into this budget crisis and the pandemic of COVID-19, addressing the safety and restoring public education. And so I am excited to be your Democratic nominee in this seat. and excited to work with these other candidates to ensure that we flip the Texas House before redistricting.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anne. That was wonderful. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Sanchez.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lorenzo Sanchez. I'm running for Texas House District 67. That's in Collin County, along the southern border near Dallas. It includes areas of Richardson, Plano, Allen, and then pieces of Dallas within Collin County and Garland. I'm really excited. We see a lot of energy going on here in Collin County. There's 2 of the top 5 races, one of them being ours, that we need to flip in order to try to gain control of the Texas House this year. There's a lot of energy going on, like I said. It's a really exciting time to know that we can really make a big difference on a national stage by just working in our backyards right now and making sure that we're doing what we need to get our voters out, to make sure that they know that we're fighting for good health care, we're fighting for good public education, we're fighting for gun sense, and then we're also going to be looking out for ways that we can make sure we can expand the Texas economy with renewable energy and, by passing certain criminal justice initiatives. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really looking forward to this forum.
Thank you
Great.
so much.
Okay, so let's get it right into the lightning round. And again, these are just 1 or 2 word answers, and they're meant to get to know you. So there's nothing trippy here or anything. We're not trying to, not looking for gotcha questions or anything like that. This is real straightforward. People from LA, New York, all over the country are going to be watching this show either live tonight or later on. They'll be watching it because we'll have it, lives online forever. And we're promoting this all over the country to try to get money back into Texas.
That's right.
For the first time in a long time, Texas is at play, and we need your help from wherever you exist in the United States.
Right.
So let's get to know our candidates. And let's just go round robin, and we'll start exactly the way we just did. So we'll go with Brandy first, Ann next, and Lorenzo next. And then the next question we'll start with Ann and Lorenzo. And then the third question, start with Lorenzo and kind of do it that way. So that means, Ann, we'll start with you this time because we started with Brandy in the openings. So Ann, who is your opponent? Let's get to know the person we need to be booing.
I'm running against Sarah Davis.
Okay. Lorenzo?
I'm running against the incumbent Jeff Leach.
And Brandy?
The incumbent Angie Chin Button.
Okay.
Great. Next question. How long have you lived in your district?
So
And we'll start with Lorenzo. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I've lived in my district for over 24 years now.
Great. Next will be Brandy.
I have lived here for 11 years.
And Ann.
And almost 20 years.
Okay, Brandy, have you ever been elected to any kind of office before? As an adult?
As an adult, no. No.
Student council doesn't count in this case, I guess. But
Yeah.
maybe it does. But. Okay, Ann
No.
and Lorenzo.
No.
Fantastic. Okay, so here's a fun question. Next spring, when President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris come and visit your district, where are you going to take them to lunch? Yes, we will start with Ann.
Sunrise taquitos.
That's, as a local, I get that. Okay, Lorenzo, you.
Wow, way to get put on the spot. I can't think of the first place I would take them. There's just so many good restaurants in our area. Probably Macero, just because it's a good atmosphere for the people that live in this area.
Great. Brandy.
I would probably offer them a choice of great Texas barbecue at Intrinsic in downtown Garland, or if they are going a little bit more healthier, Urban Eats in Richardson. That's where I go like 3 times a week. It's crazy. I love it. It's so good.
I've done
Yeah,
both of those
It's
places.
always the question is, are they going to say barbecue or tacos, or are they going to say something else? But
Yeah.
That's true.
So, okay, Lorenzo, are you ready? Right now, what we've seen is a different type of pandemic, and it's a pandemic of nonsense and people that are know-nothings, that just believe in nothing. They don't want to learn. They don't believe in science. They don't believe anything. One way to combat that is to read. Lorenzo, tell us what you're reading right now, or something that you would recommend the audience be reading right now.
Gosh, I'm reading so much news. That's basically my number one source. Let me try to think. Time Magazine has been writing really good articles about our race, and that's really where I've been focused in on what's going on right now, and so I could really contrast myself to my competitor.
Okay, Brandy?
I am reading The Silent Wife by Karen Slaughter. She writes a series of books that I'm obsessed with, so this is her most recent edition out. So that gets me out of the news. I got to get out just for a minute.
Okay. Well, hey, reading is reading. And?
Great.
First Man about Neil Armstrong.
Oh,
wow.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we're moving to one last lightning round question, and this is particularly from right now. Who is your political hero? We'll start with Brandy.
It's very difficult to name just one, but it'd probably be John Lewis, hands down.
I love that. Ann?
Barbara Jordan.
That's a Texas girl right there. And Lorenzo?
I'm still, a big fan of Ann Richards and Sam Rayburn from the area where I am. So that's where I usually align and really like to promote those individuals.
Love that.
Excellent. Okay, so that was painless. I hope you all enjoyed it. Audience, now you know a little bit more about who we're talking to tonight. So now let's see how they think. Let's go ahead and move towards these philosophical questions. But before we do, Carly, why don't you remind them what we want the audience to do tonight?
So what we want all of you to do tonight that are watching and tuning in, we want you to give us some questions. So go ahead and drop those. We've gotten a few already. So we're very excited. So keep dropping those questions. But more importantly, no race can be really run without money. Each of these candidates, they need your money. So we're asking for a minimal donation of $17 for the 17 targeted flippable Texas House seats. So if you will chip in $17 to each of these candidates, you will see all night there will be a banner running across the screen and you will see places to donate. So make sure that you do that. And please join, if you are in their district, become a volunteer for them. They need your work. They need your work.
Okay, so I think the next question starts with Ann. The first philosophical question: what is the responsibility of journalists and online activists to the truth and to the world? What is their responsibility?
So I think one of the biggest things that we've seen, especially around the issue of criminal justice reform, is transparency through this wonderful thing such as our cell phones. And the fact that journalists and activists are out on the scenes and capturing that video real-time evidence of what's occurring has allowed people to be more engaged in the process of reforms. And so I am grateful that we have participants on both sides to expose the truth. And I think that we need to protect both aspects. I think it's heartbreaking at what the Trump administration and President Trump has done in trying to discredit journalists or claim that they are fake. And I also think the act of turning our local law enforcement and military against peaceful protesters significantly offends everything that we know about our country and the Constitution and democracy. So we need to ensure that we protect both aspects. And I'm grateful again that they're getting a larger voice through social media and transparency of video.
Great. Lorenzo, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all the points that Ann made. I think that, right now, journalists in certain countries and even our country feel maybe that they can't be reporting on the truth or feel that they need to be reporting in any way to try to make sure that they're staying biased as opposed to just reporting on the facts. I think we need to make sure that we allow journalists behind the scenes. It's one of the ways that we can be transparent as legislators or as wanting to future legislators in the state of Texas. And I think it's just something really important. People want to make sure they know what's going on, that the legislators are doing what they're saying they're going to do behind those closed doors in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Good. And Brandy, you have 1 minute.
I think the most important thing that we all need to keep our eye on, especially in this particular environment, is dedication to the truth and facts. And that is one thing that journalists and hopefully really good activists are doing, and that they're doing a thorough investigation of both sides of the story and not just going basically from a snippet and then making a lot of assumptions. I think that this day and age, in the land of fake news and fake science and other things, that it is up to our journalists to keep us on the straight and narrow of realizing fantasy from reality. And that is something that we should cherish and hold close to, because, you know, it is in our First Amendment. It was the first thing they put in the Constitution. So that's where I am.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, we're going to move on to another philosophical question. We would like to know, how do you know when it's time to raise taxes, lower taxes, or leave them alone? So we'll start with you, Lorenzo.
Yeah, I think most of the time where I want to make sure is that we're not hurting average working people with the raising of taxes. I want to make sure that if we are going to raise taxes, that it's for a reason, to make sure that we're providing an additional service that we're not doing as a state, to fully fund our public education, which we're not doing as a state, those kind of things, to make sure we expand Medicaid. Those are the kind of things that I think we should be really focused on if we are going to be using taxes and trying to raise them. Otherwise, I tend to be really careful with wanting to be that, you know, to making sure that that's not the first solution that always comes to our mind. There's other ways of us making revenue other than taxation. It's just closing some loopholes. I mean, the legislator I'm running against, you know, was trying to tax shrimping boats the same as luxury yachts. And those are the kind of things that people just don't need. And yeah, there's not really a lake in my district, so I'm not sure where those constituents come into play there, but closing those loopholes is really where my focus would be.
That's a great point. Okay, Brandy, you're next.
Well, the problem with that kind of question is that it assumes one universal tax, right? We've got different avenues of taxation. We've got different things that we tax at different rates. And, you know, like 2019, they wanted to put all the sales tax and raise all the sales tax. Well, that puts a specific burden on a particular group within Texas. But then, you know, if we put all the burden on the property taxes, it's the same thing. There are different things. So when people ask me about taxes, I need to know, okay, what are we talking about? Which tax? Which tax are we looking at? Have we figured out whether or not there is a true need for that tax? Is there an actual revenue deficit? And if there is, then why is that? Is that due to inefficiencies? Let's look at that. If it's not due to inefficiencies and it's actually due to starving some things like the legislature is known to do, then we need to look at alternative sources of revenue. Mm-hmm. And then let's look at those actions before we can start talking about raising a blanket tax. So I don't really have a good yes this here, yes this there, because it's not that simple. You have to really look deep into the specific issue to determine what exactly is the problem, and then how do we fix it.
Wonderful. And to you.
Yeah, so I think what all of us are saying is that there's a balancing interest. And I believe there is a balance between employees and small business and our public interest. And so if we look at where we've been in Texas, unfortunately, right now, the Republicans are not putting us in a good position, that every time we go into session, we have to do things like tap into the rainy day fund to pay our past bills that they didn't pay for. And so we have to be mindful of the loopholes that they've created. We have to be mindful of the money that they've turned away by rejecting concepts like Medicaid expansion that hurt individuals in healthcare coverage and keep $100 billion off of our taxes. And so we need to look at these interests. And so, for example, something that we could look at are these Chapter 313 provisions that the legislature has put in place as giveaways for incentives to conduct business in Texas. But when they studied that, they actually found that 85% of those giveaways were not needed because the heart of the business occurred in Texas. So we didn't need to incentivize people to come and drill for oil and gas in Texas. And at a time where we have a public health crisis and public education crisis, we must do a proper evaluation of that balance between business, the economy, and our public interests. And I believe that this group of people will take a fair judgment on all of those aspects.
That's fantastic.
So, Brandy, how do you know how to prioritize the services that government gives? What do you we're talking about the taxes and the revenue stream, but once you have that money, how do you prioritize the spending of that money?
The way I look at everything, I'm on a couple of different boards that raise money for nonprofits, and we have to choose between which nonprofit do we select. And the issue is that we have basic needs that need to be met first: healthcare, education, infrastructure. Those are needs that have to be met. People have to have housing, they have to have food, they have to have a job. These are all things that I think come first, because without one of those particular issues, we are not able to set people up for success. So that's how I would look at it. Let's look at basic human function needs so we can set people up for success, and then we go on to other priorities.
Anne, how do you stand on that?
Yeah, so I agree. When we look at what we value as a community, do we want our population to be healthy? And unfortunately, the Republicans have answered no, because over this last decade, they've rejected Medicaid expansion. They have fought the implementation of the Affordable Care Act at every turn, and it has kept millions off healthcare coverage. I believe we're 49th in the nation in having kids graduate from high school. And so my commitment is, if people are healthy and educated, they take care of themselves. But let me give you another example. I have been fighting the issue of human trafficking for more than a decade. And if we can't step up and provide the resources that are needed to combine a public-private partnership to ensure that those children that are being subjected to abuse on the streets have a place to go, then there's something wrong with our state. And let me tell you, I've been working in this field for more than a decade, and I have numerous victims, and we still are combated with the issue of where can these victims go for services. It is not enough to ask the private sector to pick up the tab. We as a state must be responsible to the most vulnerable among us.
Lorenzo?
Yeah, I would want to focus always on the things that are affecting our community. So when I was knocking on doors, when I call people over the phone and I talk to them about the issues that affect them the most, it's those things like healthcare and making sure that we expand Medicaid. These are issues that cross party lines. Everyone's either been sick, has had a sick family member, or known someone who has been, financially ruined because of medical bills. So it's a big concern. Also, we see that we have a lot of corporate relocations into my district. It's a very popular place to be. We have a great place for families to live. We have a great education system, and we just want to make sure that we continue that legacy of fully funding our public schools. It's what people in our community expect. And as a legislator, that's what I expect to do, because I know I've been the benefit of such an amazing education.
Pardon? Okay, I'm sorry. Pardon me. I was getting all these questions coming in from the audience, making sure that we have them. Okay, so this is something that's particularly a philosophical question that I've heard constantly throughout my organization and my interaction with other Democrats. Do you consider the Texas Constitution to be a living document or a static document? And we will start with, who are we starting with? Anne, I'm sorry.
I mean, I would say it's still a living document. We have a massive Texas Constitution, and we amend it more than any other time. And so I would say that it is not static. It's constantly moving. And I know that in my practice of law, there are many times that when we talk about the element of due process, we not only reference the U.S. Constitution, but we reference the Texas Constitution. But I think about the fact that our current legislature is not upholding the promise of that Texas Constitution. For example, one of the greatest obligations that our legislature is supposed to provide is for the general diffusion of knowledge. Our greatest commitment is supposed to be around public education. And so I believe that it is time that we re-implement those values and hold true to that important constitutional document in our state.
Wonderful. Lorenzo?
I agree with Anne. I think it's a living document. I think we are constantly making sure that holds up to the values of Texans. And like she said and mentioned, Ms. Johnson hit it head on when she was talking about the fact that we're not living up to the values of our current Constitution. Public education has not been something that has been a focus of our legislator. Even when we got this HB 3 last session, it was a temporary fix for funding. We know that even if you spoke to my competitor and asked him what kind of, how is he planning on paying for it next session, he won't have that answer. He's just expecting to win this election and hold on and spend the money he needed to do that.
Yeah. And Brandy, too.
Yes, I agree. It is absolutely a living document, and we vote on it, every 3 to 4 years, it seems like. I am very much, echoing what both of these lovely people have said about refocusing what it was intended within the constitutional measures. But I think it's time that we also go back and look at some of these other amendments that were done some time ago that no longer reflect our values and the way we believe in Texas. Like, it defines marriage between only a man and a woman. I think it's time we revisit that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're right on target on our time, and we're going to the next section of questions, which are now issue specific. So these are the topics that I'm sure a lot of audience members have been waiting for, and we're going to get you all on record talking about them. And so, but before we do that, Carly, you want to remind the audience again what their role is tonight?
Absolutely. Do not forget that you need to donate $17 to each of these candidates. You can find them on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram mostly. You can also find Blue Outpost Texas, Blue Outpost TX on Twitter and Facebook and on YouTube, where all of these will live forever and ever, and we can reference them back when it comes election day. So make sure to give them your money and your time and your money and your time and your money and your time. Thank you.
And of course, you can also send us your questions, because at 8 o'clock tonight, we're going to start reading off your questions straight from Facebook and get your input onto these candidates' races. So
we
Lorenzo,
need more. We need more always.
Lorenzo, we're going to start with you on these issue questions. And it's the number one issue in polls consistently across the nation. So we may as well address the issue first. And we'll ask it in this way. How do you provide, as a government, how do you provide the most health care to the most people given our resources?
Yeah, definitely. I think the excellent way to get started would be the expansion of Medicaid. We've seen that some states that have also held back from expansion have actually made budget surpluses off of that expansion. Not only that, but we know that every single dollar that comes in generates $1.78, $1.73, depending on the study, of additional revenue for the state. Right now, in this climate of COVID, it is imperative that we find every single way to grow our economy possible without having to use, our dollars that we're right now are just giving away to other states to cover their sick. But that money belongs to Texans that need it the most. And I want to be bold, and I hope that everyone in the Texas House and the Texas Senate, and we can somehow convince our governor that this is the time to do it, because we need these funds in Texas. This belongs to the sickest people amongst us.
Brandy?
Yes, our first critical mission for this next legislative session is to expand Medicaid. It is, like Lorenzo said, the most important, the most expansive, because for every dollar that Texas puts into the barrel, we get $9 back. Okay, so not only is it the right thing to do, it's the financially smart thing to do. Another thing that Texas can do to help get more people healthcare access is to stop the war on women. Stop taking away and foreclosing opportunities for women to get healthcare in clinics because of some tangential relationship to an abortion provider or other excuse that they think that some woman may decide to get an abortion, so therefore they can no longer have health care. We have seen rural clinics close time and time and time again due to these absolutely baseless restrictions that is only intended to create shame within this community. So expand Medicaid and stop the war on women.
And
Anne.
Absolutely. So I completely agree with what both Lorenzo and Brandy have said. Texas expanding Medicaid was a no-brainer and should have been a decade ago. But since this is statewide and nationally, let me tell you what we're up against as Democrats. This is an issue we were fighting for 10 years ago, and the Republicans objected to it. But today I'm running against an incumbent that all of a sudden last week did a town hall and said, I can't believe we didn't expand Medicaid a decade ago. That made no sense. It was a 9-to-1 proposition. Well, I'm fortunate to tell you we have the receipts. I see the letter you sent saying, let's challenge the constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act. It is the state of Texas that is at the United States Supreme Court, not only trying to keep Texans from having access to the Affordable Care Act, but trying to undo it for the nation. And so we are running against this population that had no qualms about trying to keep people from being able to get coverage for pre-existing condition. And now when it seems like a good idea, saying, wow, we had no idea what you were talking about. We are the party that will actually protect and defend those individuals who need access to healthcare. And this is the critical election cycle where we're going to determine whether or not Texas moves forward with providing healthcare for our citizens, or we're going to go back to what the Republicans have done for a decade, which is to play games with partisanship and put people's health and lives at risk.
Absolutely.
But before I let Carly go to the next question, at the end of this hour, we're going to address an issue that just happened in the worst endorsement of the entire state of Texas. We'll talk about it briefly later on in the hour, so we'll get there. But
sounds good.
It's apropos to the topic, so
yeah, absolutely.
Remember that, audience. We'll come back to it. But Carly,
I want to thank you and Brandy and Ann for speaking to women and to women's issues specifically. Just personally, that's a huge cause for me as a member of Road Women. We're dedicated to pro-choice candidates, so I appreciate your speaking on that. Brandy, we'll start with you on this next one. Our next question is, what would comprehensive gun policy look like to you?
To me, very first thing, absolutely universal background checks. No more loopholes for private owners. Absolutely 1000%. We need to have red flag laws that those who may be to be adjudicated unsafe for society and for the community or an individual can relinquish the guns until such time that person can receive care. I've heard a lot of, pushback on things like that, but that provides due process to the gun owner to be able to go through to determine whether or not there is a threat to someone or the community. So those are my two main issues that I'd really like to address in this legislative session. Again, I would like to see more funding go to schools to provide counselors for trauma identification and true counseling, not, hey, what college you're going to go to, but hey, what's going on with you at home? That's another thing that we need to look at, because I do not believe in putting firearms into the public school system.
Appreciate it. Ann?
So I'm going to echo just what Brandy said. I am so proud to be endorsed by Everytown. I stand with Moms Demand Action and absolutely stand with their idea of background checks, extreme risk protection orders, and safe storage. And let me tell you why it is so important. Because we have had 4 of the top 10 mass shootings in the United States, in Texas, in the last 2 years. And the legislature, loyal to the NRA, has remained absolutely silent. And so I like to refer to this question as a Texas two-step, because we saw what Moms Demand Action did in Virginia in flipping all of the chambers to advance their interests. But we know that's not realistic at this moment because of the gerrymandering of 2011 and how Republicans had drawn the Senate out of line. And so we need to take the Texas House this time to advance fair lines moving forward. And then we can advance these policies, which more than 80% of Texans agree with, because these are common sense reforms that lawful gun owners also recognize are the right step. And so we win this time. We draw fair lines to take statewide races in 2022 and advance the interest of moms.
Way to bring it back around. I like that. Lorenzo.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important for my community that we move towards gun sense here in Texas and throughout the state, really, not just in our local district. The El Paso shooter came from our district. He could have just as easily have targeted a Walmart, that my family uses here within district. So it's something that people are very aware of here. We've lost several of our high school students to gun violence these last few years and have seen those reports coming out. So people are aware. I think the only thing that I would say in addition to is I support limits to magazine capacities and making sure that these weapons can't be used to basically destroy someone and make them unsalvageable to nurses and doctors. I want to make sure that we are taking care of everybody. And I echo what Brandy was talking about as far as making sure that we're expanding counselors within our schools to make sure that people can actually speak about their feelings and what's going on in their homes and how they're feeling about their future, as opposed to just speaking about what classes they're going to take or what college they're applying to. Thank you.
Thank
So,
you.
Anne, it's a big topic in the news the last year, and really it's an ongoing issue, but it's boiled down to a buzzword, and the buzzword is social justice reform. What does social justice reform look like in your eyes?
So I think when we talk about social justice reform, we are talking about the concept of intersectionality. We are talking about the fact that you can't just address the issues of communities of color and other individuals who are vulnerable in our community without addressing the need for public education, for healthcare, and for common sense gun reform. So I believe what we are starting to see is people pay attention that you can no longer look at these issues in a silo and recognize the fact that when we talk about women's issues, when we talk about supporting women, it's not just saying that your choice. It's advancing the issues of healthcare that ensure that women or their children have access to go see a physician and coverage at normal times, to access to public education, to access to technology. We are seeing now in this moment of being in COVID and having kids that are supposed to be at home, that we have some kids that have access to computers and high-speed internet, and we have some that don't. And so we've got to start addressing what I would call these wraparound issues and the intersectionality of which our decisions in Austin cross over all party lines and are all individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Lorenzo, what does social justice reform look like to you?
Gosh, I don't know how to follow up, and you basically hit so many points. That was amazing. And I think that's where we are really as a campaign. I believe that that's where a lot of these Democrats are right now that are running for House in these most flippable districts. We want to get in there and we want to work for everyone. We actually want to bring solutions back. So even if it is something that, people don't want to talk about, it's an issue that people shy away from sometimes, politically speaking. Even, talking about the reproductive health care of all Texans and making sure that we're not attacking certain groups. It's just something that we need to keep talking about. These things don't always cost money either. It just makes sure that we are offering all opportunities to every Texan to make sure that they can live successful lives.
Brandy, what does social justice reform look like to you?
I mean, Anne took the cake. I mean, I don't know how, like Lorenzo said, how to follow that, but it's, what she's saying is so on point, is that social justice and criminal justice reform and education reform and women's rights, all of this is interconnected. All of this is weaving together. And like, if you look at the lack of access to healthcare, mostly due to people of color. And why is that? Because so we need to start looking at, okay, then this, then this, then this. And once you realize that it all comes back to kind of systemic issues that we have not addressed. We have not addressed funding in lower income neighborhoods. We have not addressed socioeconomical issues like access to fresh food in certain communities. We have not addressed the fact that, people in the rural communities have to drive for 2.5 hours to get healthcare or to, get food. These are all things that we have to look up as a whole, as the whole board, instead of all these little silos, because it's all connected. And once we can get the systemic racism out of it, the systemic issues of continuing generational poverty, that's when we will have social equality.
Fantastic from all of you. Thank you. Lorenzo, if we start asking about Texas education it's going to lead us to a million questions, from teacher certification to charter schools to access between for Wi-Fi between rural and urban areas, which some of you have all hit on some part of this tonight. So, and we also have to deal with higher education funding and the Robin Hood law. So we'll just ask you in 1 minute, how are you going to fix Texas education? Go.
I don't know how I'm going to fix it on my own, but hopefully with a lot of help from my colleagues and a lot of sleepless nights, we're going to find ways to continue to work with people across the aisle to fix some of these problems that are affecting Texans. I always like to mention that I'm that happy warrior, that, you know, no matter what you do to me in one bill, I'm still going to come back and try to work with you on another one. It's incumbent upon me, and that's what my community is expecting from me. But as far as education is concerned, right now, I'm really hearing the voices of the people within my community. We have a nursing shortage within our schools, and during a pandemic, that is not a good idea. We need to make sure that we immediately fully staff our nurses in these schools to make sure that if there is an outbreak, that we can trace it quickly and get that news back to the parents and work that kind of thing around. And then the other thing is going to be making sure that we're paying a living wage to everyone within our education system. That includes our teachers, that includes administrators, bus drivers. I want everyone to be making sure that they're making a good salary in order for them to be able to provide for their family and hopefully keep our community safe.
Great. Thank you so much. And Brandy, to you.
So, yeah, I'm with Lorenzo. I don't know if we can solely fix education all in one session, although we're going to give it everything that we've got. There's first thing we have to do is the last 30 years of this legislature has completely and totally starved public education. It has starved it. It has found absolutely every opportunity to take money away or to keep money from going in. We've got to stop that. We need to make sure that there is sustainable funding. We need to find more avenues and revenue. We need to make sure that the money that is intended to come back from recapture doesn't go into the general fund like it does now. It needs to go back into public education budget directly. Also, we need to address charter schools. So I don't, good or bad charter schools, I'm not passing judgment. Here's the issue. Right now, the charter schools are 100% paid for by our taxes. They are state funded 100%, yet they don't have to do with most of the regulations that we do for public education. However, the amount that we pay for charter schools happens to be almost the same amount that we are getting back in recapture. Yeah. So the money that was intended to go into the low property value school districts is still not getting there. All right, so that's another thing that we need to do. We need to address how we're funding public education totally in its full dynamic situation.
Okay, that was over a minute. I know it's a huge question. No, that's great. That's great. And okay, that's it. You got the 1 minute to fix it all. Fix it all.
I know. I was going to say, I agree with Brandy. It's really hard to answer this question in 1 minute. So let me give you the short version. We have seen this movie before. In 2011, when the Republicans had a down budget, they balanced their poor policy decisions and poor budget by cutting $5.3 billion from public education and slashing 10,000 teacher jobs. And you may say, well, Ann, that's a decision that they had to make at the time. But tell me, all those great years we've had in Texas since then, because we all know it, because we've all seen Governor Abbott's ads about how great Texas is for the economy and business. Tell me when they put the money back in over this last decade. Well, they never did. Even HB3 last cycle did not get us back to par from the cuts from 2011. And the comptroller has already told us that that poison pill they put in on reducing property tax values, guess what? We're not going to have the money they thought because of this crisis. And so my most immediate concern is we're in another crisis. And I don't trust those same people that cut from kids and teachers in a crisis. I believe COVID has exposed the moment of the value of teachers. Ask any of those parents at home trying to teach their kids right now. We need to invest in our public education, commit to teachers as the professionals that they are, and ensure that kids and families will be safe. That's a task for a new leadership with Democrats in the House, not the old guard that's already proven what they'll do to public education.
So, Brandy, let's keep this pace because we only have about 5 minutes left in the hour. And what we wanted to do at this point was actually give you a chance to address your district. So we're going to give you 1 minute. Tell us about your district. What is it that's unique about the issues in your district, the person you're running against? Give us a sense of the excitement, the opportunity, the dread that's happening now, whatever it is. You have 1 minute. You know, the whole country's looking at you. They're trying to decide if you do that $17 or not. Tell us about why your district needs to flip.
So my district needs to flip because it has not been represented appropriately since she's been in office since 2008. So my opponent has had 12 years to make a difference for this district. Now you can judge whether she has, and you can judge whether she haven't. I would argue she has not. In that 12 years, she has consistently voted against education. She has consistently voted against expansion of Medicaid. She has consistently said she's a friend of public education, yet voted against it. She is a woman who voted against Equal Pay for Women Act, which was a bipartisan bill.
Yep.
I don't understand that. It is time that she actually looks at the district and start voting for the district and being there. We have a district that the median income is $50,000 with an average household occupancy of 4. Expanding Medicaid would be crucial and change the lives of this district, yet she continues to refuse to do it. This is just a long line of 12 years. So my argument is, hey, you've seen what she can do. Now give me a chance, because I will fight for you, because I am you. I'm a mother of a daughter in Garland, ISD. I am a small business owner. I am a wife and a property owner. I have the same issues and the same worries as everyone else in my district, and I will fight to protect all of us.
And you're a good candidate who's using up all her time. And
sorry, I do it. Sorry.
That's perfect.
And
Thank you so much. And I am really excited about the opportunity to represent House District 134. We are in the west side, almost the heart of Houston, and we are part of the medical center. And so what I have never understood about our current Republican incumbent, who ran as a Tea Party candidate in 2010 and bragged of being a cancer survivor who would fight the implementation of the Affordable Care Act at every turn. And she has held true to it. In contrast, I too am a cancer survivor, and I remember that moment of that diagnosis. I remember walking into MD Anderson and them saving my life and giving me a second chance at life. And I have never understood how, as a cancer survivor, she could say, I'm grateful for the treatment, but now my sole responsibility is to keep others from getting it. That is not who we are in this district. This district voted 60% for Beto. And over this decade, my opponent has cut public education, remained loyal to the NRA, has ensured that healthcare would not pass, and fought the implementation of Medicaid expansion. That's bad for our citizens, and it's bad for our medical community and medical center. I will fight to advance their coverage interests.
And we're going to get right back to you, Ann. I want to hear Lorenzo first, but I'm going to give Ann an additional minute into the end of this hour to talk about that issue we said a little bit earlier. Lorenzo, give us your district in a minute.
Perfect. My district is full of a lot of my family members and people that helped raise me. So I am very passionate about going down there and fighting for them. In case you guys were wondering, I'm not a full-time politician. This is actually out of character for me. I felt like I could organize my community, which is something that we were very successful in doing. We have the most volunteers out of any campaign before us, and this is for a Texas House race. But we believe that was the kind of energy we were going to need in order to make sure that we flip this seat in November. It's just so important for people. The current legislator has been ranked one of the worst legislators in our state by Texas Monthly because he's really not looking out for the interests of his community. He's looking out for his own interests. He's looking out for the interests of his law firm and for the people who are lining his pockets when he's running these campaigns. That is what makes me different than my competitor. I want to go and represent the people, every single person within my community, and help bring solutions, not just listen to them, but try to go back to Austin and try to find ways to help. That is what I want to do in my community. Community is very diverse, religiously, economically speaking, and it's ready for new representation.
So, Ann, I promised at the top of the hour to talk about this issue, and I'm not going to name the group that endorsed against you. But and you can choose to name them or not, it doesn't matter. But here's what's happening for people around the country watching this. Here's what we in the business call frustration. There is a liberal and otherwise extremely liberal, very progressive group that we all donate to, and a couple of groups actually that we all donate to and cherish and support, and who support every issue that was talked about tonight so far. But Ann is running against the one Republican in Texas, the one female Republican in Texas who tends to vote for women's issues. And because of that, these liberal groups have decided to endorse the Republican in this case. And they do it by, they think they're hedging their bet. They figure Ann or any Democrat running in this race is always going to be with them no matter what if they win. But the Republican may not stay with them if they don't get that endorsement. And I got to tell you, I'm not calling them out as cowards, but I'm going to tell you, in 2020, if you cannot be solidly against the Republican agenda, you need a little slap into reality, And Ann, I'm going to give you just 30 seconds to address this issue. You tell us where you want to be with this, how you want to respond to that.
Let me tell you that my career has been standing up for victims of sexual exploitation and human trafficking. And the vast majority of that population is vulnerable women and children. So every organization, from Planned Parenthood, NARAL, everybody else that supports women and children knows that I am 100% in their corner. And there will never be a day on the Texas floor of the House where I quibble about it. But what we are talking about is a Republican who says that she is pro-choice and even passes a couple of good votes that are pro-choice. This is the devastating part of this issue, which is over her decade in the Texas House, her presence in keeping a Republican majority, despite her few good votes, has allowed the Republicans the opportunity to pass the sonogram bill, to pass the restrictive doctor's privileges bill, to pass Senate Bill 22, which cut funding to Planned Parenthood. And so the reality is, and I have to say, it was a hard week, but in the same day that endorsement came out, an article came out in the Chronicle where Sarah Davis admitted the thing we all kind of knew, which is she takes the votes the Republican leadership lets her take. She admitted she killed Medicaid expansion in 2017 because the GOP leadership said, go do it. And so when the rubber meets the road, Sarah Davis does what she is told by the Republicans. If you don't want the Republicans to have control over what she does, the solution is to flip the Texas House. And that has to be done starting in her home district and HD 134.
And Sarah Davis is probably the most powerful Republican in Texas that you've never heard of. She is in charge of the calendars committee. She, along with the lieutenant governor, decide what bills go up to be voted on in the first place. So that's why this hedge of bets, and it's terrible because Democrats have been lied to because of these endorsements, and this endorsement went against you 2 years ago too when you ran. These endorsements have convinced Democrats that they too should hedge their bets, and there is no hedging of bets in 2020. Unequivocally, you vote for the Democrat. We need 9 seats to flip to take back the House. All 3 of the people on tonight are very flippable districts, and so. Right now, again, pull out your wallet before you get to ask your questions. Pull out your wallet, donate $17 to each of these 3 candidates, because that represents the 17 districts that are within reach, within statistical reach of being flipped very easily in November. I'm not gonna sit on my high horse. You go ahead, Ann.
Jaime, can I say that people like to say, and even Republicans are going to try to convince you that you need to send some message that a pro-choice Republican has to be protected. But let me put it to you this way. Do you like Sarah Davis enough to give Governor Greg Abbott control of the House and control of the district lines in Texas for a decade? Because that's exactly the consequence of voting for her in this cycle on redistricting, especially against a Democratic candidate who stand up for all of our democratic values, most of which women's health and protecting healthcare and women's right to choose.
And one last thing, just because we're now I'm on a little whatever, but this endorsement is such a earth-shattering endorsement. It would be the equivalent of the NRA endorsing the Democrat in the race against a sharpshooter with all sorts of shooting awards and an NRA lifetime membership. If the NRA were to endorse against that kind of Republican, you would be just as appalled or upset about it if you were the Republican. In this case, it is that earth-shattering an endorsement in the wrong direction. And so let's go ahead and leave it at that. I appreciate y'all. Audience, now it's your turn. And so we have a whole laundry list of questions to get to. Carly, I'll let you start it off.
Okay, great. I'm going to start with Lorenzo since we gave Ann a little bit of extra time to respond to Sarah Davis. So I would like to start with this question from our audience. What is each campaign doing for their Latino outreach? And what is the one issue other than immigration that you're speaking about to the Latino community? Lorenzo, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I would say what I am doing is making sure that I go out there and speak to my community. I kind of feel responsible for them now that I am the nominee, to make sure that I keep them engaged, to make sure I get them to come out and look at all the Democrats on the ballot, which hasn't happened before. We know that when Latinos see themselves on the ballot, they come out in higher numbers, and that is what I am counting on, making sure they can come out. But we're also reaching out to every single group within our community. Like I mentioned, it is one of the most diverse House districts within the state. So we also are making sure that everybody within the separate communities that I am not a member of, be it the Muslim community, be it the Jewish community, making sure that they're getting their friends and their voters out to the polls as well.
Great.
And let me just remind everybody, we're going to do 30-second answers in this section of the process. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. Brandy, Latino outreach and one issue you're talking about with them other than immigration.
Yes, so I am talking with everyone in my district and not identifying them by nationality or race, because the same thing holds true throughout. Everyone's worried about getting health care. Everyone is worried about getting education and making sure their children are set up to succeed. These are the two major issues that are facing my district. They're the two major issues facing Texas. And that is what I'm talking about continually over and over, because they're the two most important things to me.
Thank you. Ann?
Yeah, in addition to the fact that we as state representatives need to fight the Republicans, the federal government, Trump, and all that they are doing on our Texas borders with keeping kids in cages and everything else. But we also have a local issue to fight. And if you're not aware of it, last 2 sessions ago, my opponent, our incumbent, actually passed a provision called SB 4. And what that means is show me your papers legislation. And it means that my Latino wife, if she were to get pulled over for a speeding ticket, would somehow have to prove that she's a citizen because she's from a community of color. These are the kind of provisions and policies we're talking about changing for everybody in communities of all color.
Okay, Brandy, let me read this question directly just so I get it exactly right. It says, I'm an LGBTQIA teacher, and I want to hear each of your opinions on whether you would support a bill to get rid of the no promo homo law that makes it against the law for a teacher to discuss LGBTQIA issues in the classroom without also discussing the risks of the lifestyle. So I don't know if you're familiar with that law. The teachers are not allowed to.
I was not.
So,
yeah, so that's okay. So absolutely, we need to get rid of that. And it's unfortunate that that's there. And I think that all aspects of sexuality, human identity, gender, all of that need to be thoroughly discussed and, throughout all the educational system. It should be required. I've got a friend that's 11 years old, of my daughter, who's, says she's bisexual. I've got another one who's like, I'm a boy, even though she was born a girl. These things are happening. This is everywhere. It needs to be discussed out and open without stigma and shame.
Ann?
So we've made advancements in Texas around LGBTQ issues, but I would say it's because of the Supreme Court. For example, I was not allowed to marry my wife until the United States Supreme Court told us so. When you look at the provisions like Texas versus Lawrence, that comes from Texas. And so we can absolutely do better and advance the interests of our community. I can also say that my belief, my heart, my teaching, and it took a while to get to this point, is that the God that I believe in made me this way. And there is nothing okay about our institutions telling children who may be struggling with their own identity that there's something wrong with them. And so I will support at every turn that every individual from our community and all communities understand their strength and their value from the earliest stages.
Lorenzo?
Yeah, I really worry about the harm that causes children and the example that we're setting. I will be the, I guess, only openly gay male serving in the legislature, and that is a topic that I was bringing up a little bit earlier. It doesn't cost us money to be, the state of personal freedoms, to be that real, the state of y'all, and making sure that every family feels invited and has the opportunity to really join in the Texas dream and live amongst our neighbors. I've been really, really fortunate that we've had a lot of support from different volunteers in our community, but just to show you how it doesn't match up with the current legislator, the University of Texas at Dallas has been ranked one of the best schools for LGBTQ plus students to attend. And then we have a legislator who's trying to pass bathroom bills, and that's the focus of their legislative session, to keep winning these races.
Lorenzo, thank you. And thank you for the reminder that y'all means all. That's always been something that we certainly are progressive about here in Texas, is calling everybody y'all. So I really appreciate that. And I want to remind everybody again, please donate $17 to each of these candidates. You can find their information at the bottom of the screen in the banner. And we have two openly gay candidates sitting here. We also have a great ally. We need to make sure that they get into the Texas State House so they can represent us all. Y'all means all. Okay, so we're going to start once more with Ann. We will move on to this question, and I will try to read it directly. According to the juvenile justice system of Texas, 50,000 youth are incarcerated in Texas each year. What are some of the steps that you would take through legislation and funding to keep youth engaged in their schools and out of the system?
So I've been in our Juvenile Justice Center as an advocate and attorney for juveniles. And one of the things that I have seen shift over the years is more and more kids are brought into the Juvenile Justice Center for things that if they were committed when we were kids, it would have been something that the school would have dealt with differently. And so I think we absolutely need to shut down what we call this school to prison pipeline. And again, this kind of comes back to the intersectionality, because you can look at third grade reading levels and almost predict how many prisons you're going to need to build in the future. So again, it comes back to public education. But my belief is arrest as recovery, not conviction. We need to get away from criminalizing our kids and find a better way to do diversion programs.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lorenzo.
Yep, exactly. Expand on diversion programs, making sure that we are seeing what really is causing these people maybe to recommit crimes that are going to end up putting them right back into the place that we are, and really focusing on continuing education during the process to make sure that we're rehabilitating people. A lot of people just want to come out of prison and make sure that they can find a job and start working for themselves, and we should be supporting those individuals.
Absolutely. Brandy?
So to touch on what Ann said and to go a little bit further, yeah, we have got to eradicate the school to prison pipeline, and we have got to do that by absolutely addressing how schools are handling discipline issues. That should not be criminalized behavior. We need to bring in social services and do a wraparound and make sure that we can identify what is going on with that student before they go and be labeled a criminal. Not everything has to be punitive. And that is what we have got to get away from, not only in our schools, but also in the rest of our environment. We've got to find a way to identify the issues of the behavior and then provide services to help remedy that. That's what I want to do.
Along those same lines, the audience seems to want to keep us in this topic a little bit longer. Lorenzo, what do you think about for-profit private prisons?
I think they should be abolished. I don't think that that's a smart way to be looking at these things. These corporations are in place to make money. And we are, as a society, trying to make sure that we keep our communities safe, that if someone commits a crime, that they can pay their time for that crime and then rejoin our system afterwards. That's the point. They're coming back into our system once they've served their time. So we want to make sure that they're ready to be members of our society. And I think that's where we really need to put our focus. And I don't believe that for-profit prisons are the place where we should be putting any sort of investment right now.
Brandy?
I'm totally against for-profit private prisons. I think that they are essentially malicious hotels, and the way that you become profitable is full occupancy, and that is not something we need to strive to do. That is not something that we should be, as a society, supporting. So I'm 100% against them.
Ann?
Yeah, in my time as a criminal defense lawyer, when we were been overcrowded around Harvey and other times, we were actually sending inmates to Louisiana, and the state of Texas was paying the state of Louisiana to house our inmates. That makes no sense from an economical standpoint. And so we absolutely have to look at these issues of bail reform, and there's a clear, bright line. If there is a danger to the community or community safety, those are the people that need to be housed. But we have gone beyond that point where we are incarcerating and housing people that are suffering from issues like addiction, which can be dealt with in a far more therapeutic manner. One last thing, your Harris County Jail is the state's largest mental health facility. That tells you what is wrong with our system right now.
Same, Lorenzo. I was like, clap for that. Clap for all three of you. We've got to get these candidates elected. Can you see the amount of cooperation and spirit that they have, that they're going to bring to the Texas House together to represent all of us? Please donate that money. Make sure that you go out, tell 5 of your friends to vote for each of these people if you live in their district. If you don't, find someone you know that does and tell them. Tell them to vote, tell them to donate. We need to get these wonderful, amazing candidates the ability to work together to bring the fairness, equality, and real attention to the issues that matter. Okay, we are going to move to some more questions from the audience, and I swear we could do this all night. We have so many questions coming in. So let's move on to the energy capital. We are the energy capital of our nation. Historically, that has been fossil fuel based. So what is your plan to make Texas the clean energy capital of the world? And we will start with Brandy.
Well, what the biggest issue with Texas is that we derive over 20% of our income as a state from fossil fuels. We literally depend on fossil fuels to be able to run this state. And that is something we have got to start transitioning. And one way we do it is that we start investing in renewable fuels. We have got to start using that and looking at that as that is our new way to survive and hitch ourselves from the fossil fuel industry. So there's a lot of things we can do, but I'm running out of time and I apologize.
It's great. Ann.
So here in House District 134, 1 in 10 of our jobs is tied to the oil and gas industry. And so I've gotten a good opportunity to talk with our community, and they are saying a phrase that we should be leading on, and that is the energy transition. In this state, the diversity of our large size of Texas, we actually have the ability to be 80% renewable energy within 10 years because we have this great trifecta of West Texas winds, solar, and coastal winds. All we need is the public commitment to help the private industry move towards this new energy transition. There is no reason we can't be the leader in a new economy around renewables, just as we have been on oil and gas. It's time to move forward.
Lorenzo?
I definitely agree with what Johnson just said, I think we need to make sure that we are taking care of the people who are working within the industry who may suffer those losses as we're transitioning away to the future of Texas, really. We are the #1 state for wind energy by far, compared to California, who's #2, and Oklahoma, #3. We have more than they have combined. And those are the kind of places where Texas should be leading. That's where we should be #1, at making sure that we are protecting Texans for future generations and still keeping our employees, trained in order to have the jobs they need to live successful lives.
That's right.
So, Ann, the next audience question deals with the no excuse voter, mail-in balloting and all that, and voter suppression in general in Texas. What do we do to solve this?
We flipped the Texas House because we have seen what Republicans will do to implement voter suppression. And I believe the greatest form is gerrymandering. When every 10 years they carve up the districts to ensure and know who their candidates will be. We vote maybe 53% Republican statewide, but they have drawn our congressional districts to be 2/3 Republican guaranteed. Those of you outside Texas, that's why people care about flipping the Texas House, because if we just become fair, that changes the dynamic for the entire nation. It all starts right here with flipping the Texas House and stopping Republicans like Governor Greg Abbott from gerrymandering our districts.
Lorenzo?
Flip the Texas House is definitely the first thing we need to do. We need automatic voter registration. We need everyone being able to provide or submit their ballot by mail if they would like. The wonderful thing is that a lot of states within our country have already done this. So it's going to be easy for people like Brandy and Ann and me to sit down and look at where they had issues and solve those problems already, because we can take care of it. We can do it the best in Texas, and I really do believe that. So we just need to keep continuing to encourage people to go out there and vote, let them know to hold their politicians accountable so everyone can cast that ballot.
And Brandy?
Absolutely. Flipping the Texas House is just the first step in a long line of actions that's going to need to happen. Unfortunately, the GOP in Texas, our leadership between Ken Paxton, Dan Patrick, and Greg Abbott have made it very clear that they are about vote suppression. Mm-hmm. And so therefore, after we flip the Texas House, we've got to flip the rest of the legislature. So what I'm telling people, vote your values. Make sure you understand who it is you're voting for and what they stand for, because they have got the power in their hands.
Yeah, I appreciate that. All of your answers are right on the money. Again, donate $17 to each of these House district candidates. It's so important. I'm so inspired by every answer that you're giving. With every breath you take and every word that you speak, I am more confident that we can literally change the way the entire nation runs if we elect you guys so that we can get you guys into the House and really take back our standing in the world as being, financially, fiscally aware, but really taking care of our citizens, So we will move on to the next question, and we're running out of time, I believe. Is that right, Jaime?
Go ahead and ask another one.
Okay. So this one is particularly prescient because we are living in COVID times. So considering the Texas response to COVID, what would you do to improve the response here? And we will start with Brandy.
The first thing that came to my mind was get rid of Greg Abbott. But since we can't do that for another 2 years, that we have got to just heavily invest and give access to testing. The only way that we're going to be able to beat this thing is by being able to identify it, track it, and contain it.
Right.
So unless we actually put resources into massive testing all over the state, we're just going to keep rinse and repeat. And so that's what we have to do.
Ann?
Yeah, absolutely. Follow the science and follow the directive of our medical community. That is something that we saw Governor Greg Abbott fail to do. Mm-hmm. He followed the leadership of Trump, made masks a partisan issue, opened up business without properly flattening the curve or protecting people. And what did we pay for it? Thousands of Texans paid for the partisanship with their lives. Follow the science and not the party.
I agree. We need to listen to doctors. and the professionals that are doing the work on the ground to make sure that they're keeping us safe. We need to expand testing. It's so important for us to know who has had it, who currently has it, and who's had it in the past as well, just so we can know and start to already build on that information. It's going to be so important in the future. But getting rid of Greg Abbott is the number one thing that we need to do in 2022. The lack of leadership that we saw from our state is one of the biggest issues that it's causing now a ripple effect throughout our state. It's that uneasiness. People don't know, when schools are going to be open. They don't know if they can trust our government when they're hearing different messages from different leaders. So we just need people that are going to be bold and stand up to the people that are actually, living within our state, and make sure we're keeping people safe and doing what's right by our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're getting close to wrap up time, because I want to give each of y'all a minute to give a wrap up statement. But I just want to thank the audience. We have a lot of questions that were posted on Facebook we didn't get time to get to. Candidates, traditionally what happens is, if y'all don't mind going onto Facebook after the show tonight or sometime tonight or tomorrow and answer some of these questions on your own time. I know the audience definitely appreciates your efforts. There's a lot of discussion you'll see after the show. You'll go on and log on. So there's a lot of discussion that has been generated. And so, thank you all very much for participating in everything we've done tonight. Again, audience, you're meeting 3 candidates tonight, but from now on, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday nights, all through October, all through September, we're going to have shows like this. We're going to be introducing you to candidates from across the state of Texas, all different levels of candidates. The first 17 that we're highlighting are these 17 flippable state house district seats. Then we're going to go talk to some of the newest members of the state house who are defending for the first time their seats. So we're going to talk to them later on in September. And then in October, we're going to get to congressional races in Texas that are flippable, and some of these statewide offices like the Railroad Commission and State Board of Education races. So there's a lot yet to come in the future. Come back to us every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday night. With that, remember $17 to each of these candidates. Thank you all very much. Let's go ahead and pass it to Carly to do this little end sequence for us.
Great. Okay, we're going to ask you to do a 1-minute wrap up. And again, also not just donate, give your time. I know that many members of Road Women are stepping up to donate their time and give their time and their writing skills to postcard writing for Ann Johnson. So you and your community can also do all of these efforts. They're all virtually available. There are phone banks, text banks, postcard writing campaigns for everybody. Lit Drops. Please, 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 please check out their websites for all of their campaign opportunities, volunteer opportunities. They need you. They need your voice. They need your feet. They need your fingers, and they need your ears and eyes to be on the ground and let them know the issues of today. Okay, so we will start where we kind of left off. I'm going to go ahead and finish it. Pardon me, Lorenzo, but I'm going to go ahead and start with Brandy as the first person to do it because ladies first. That's the Texas way.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you, everyone, for taking time to listen and pay attention to all of our talking and stances issues. I just want to reiterate the importance of this election. This election is not only pivotal to Texas, but it's pivotal to the nation, because once we flip the Texas House, we'll be able to have fair maps. And once we have fair maps in Texas, it will go blue if it doesn't go beforehand. And when we go blue, we take 38 up to 41 after the census electoral votes with us. And so we will be able to have a Democrat in the White House for the next 10 years because there is no electoral math that will allow a Republican to win the White House without taking Texas. So please go to my website. It's Brandy K as in kite chambers.com. And on all social medias, it's Brandy for Texas, BRANDY FOR. And then Texas spelled out. I appreciate you so much. Please reach out if you have any questions, and thank you for your time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And we will take it to you. 1 minute.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm so honored to be here this evening. I am so I'm so grateful and honored to be here this evening, and thank you for giving us an opportunity to talk about our values and what we share. I am proud to tell you this story that many years ago, I was appointed to represent a 13-year-old little girl charged with prostitution. I believed that it was wrong, and never before in the nation had anybody fought it. And people told me, Ann, why do you bother? You can't change it. You can't make it different. I'm proud to tell you years later, we did. And I still train on these issues in this case nationwide. And when I do, people say, really? Texas? This landmark decision, progressive movement to protect kids came out of Texas? And I say, yes, absolutely. I believe the same today. I am so optimistic about November and the fact that we will turn Texas blue. We absolutely need your help in this district, because the other good news I can tell you is that we are running one heck of a race, and polling shows us up 44 against 42 for our incumbent Republican. We are absolutely in a position to win, and we need you to add gas to that vehicle. So if you can contribute, please contribute. If you can't contribute, join us by phone banking, writing postcards, and everything else. I am so honored to have Road Women, Meyerland Democrats, and so many others that are giving us the fuel to get across the finish line. And when we do, we will turn Texas blue with your help.
That's right. Thank you so much. Here, Lorenzo, you're the last one.
Right. Thank you, everybody. And thank you to the hosts for hosting this event. But I do want to send out a heartfelt thank you for everyone who's listening to us throughout social media. These races are just so important. So it means the world to me to know that people are tuning in and paying attention to what we're trying to achieve here in Texas and Collin County in my race. I love this community. That's why I decided to run. I decided that I wanted to go and be of service to my community the same way my community has always been of service to me. My family lives here. I had teachers stay with me after school to make sure that I was going to get knowledge I needed to go to college and get a job. I'm now a small business owner in this area, and I am just so appreciative of the work that everyone has done on my campaign, and just trying to make sure that I could be an individual that could one day run for a race like this. We are really, really close to being able to flip this seat. Our poll numbers show us ahead, but we also know that we need the funds to continue to get my story out. Our competitor has over $1 million in the bank, ready to start, smearing my name and trying to fight against the common sense reforms that I'm looking to achieve in the legislature. I can't do it without you. Please go to our website, volunteer, donate if you can, lorenzofortexas.com, FOR, and then also we're on social media. You can find us there. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much. I've never been more assured that we are doing the right thing here in Texas than I have been tonight. You have all really inspired me personally, and I hope every viewer that has joined us today and will join us in the future. Remember to donate. Remember to give time.
Thank you all. Good night.
Good night. And please go answer those questions, because there are a lot of really great ones down there. There really are. There's some amazing questions we didn't get to that I would personally love to see your stances on. So please do that.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank y'all. Go get them.